Guys, I'm going to talk to you right off the bat about love languages. And we're going to get some insights from our children. We asked our kids what love languages meant to them, and we kind of had like a little interview with our own kids and their perspective. Our kids, you got to get their ages are 14
and 11.
And they're both boys. So we just asked a few questions to them.
Yeah.
Ready? First question was, how can a stranger tell if two people are married? And our oldest son said, if there's Mrs. in the name, if they're committed to God, they can't have sex before marriage, so they won't have kids together if they aren't married. My jaw dropped on the ground at this point. I'm like, who am I speaking to here?
I do abstinence education, so he knew the exact right answer.
Our youngest son, Tyler, he said, well, people hold hands together. That's how you tell they're married. Okay, well, that works. Yeah.
Okay. Then we asked, what do most people do on a date? And Caleb said, we'll just tell you our names. Caleb is our 14-year-old, and Tyler is our 11-year-old. And Caleb said, people go to the movies, or they walk, or they go to a restaurant. And Tyler said they sit together, and when a girl leaves the table, the man should stand up.
Yay! He got me on that one because...
I go on dates with my boys, and I think I'm just a little hard on my 11-year-old.
Another question was when is it okay to kiss someone? And our oldest said, when the person you're dating feels comfortable. And I had to elaborate. Comfortable meaning, what, the room temperature or what? What are you talking about? And our youngest said, when you're married only. Once you're married, kissing's
good.
Kissing's fine.
We also asked, what do you think about love? And Caleb said, this is really one of those moments where you have that pride, that parental pride that just fills your heart. He said, there are two kinds of love, metaphorical love and emotional love.
Where'd the kid come up with these? I can't even spell them. I don't know. What's he doing here?
Metaphorical is like, I love pizza, and emotional love is like, I love my wife. Emotional love is like a doorbell in your brain that makes you feel special.
Yeah, that was pretty cool when he said that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's
Sometimes
good.
They just really surprise you.
Yeah.
Tyler said, it's an emotion when they like someone in a special way, but you have to act in love too.
That means no more texting on the phone, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And the last question we asked our kids was, how do you make love last? And Caleb said, get married, commit yourself to each other and to God, and if you don't do that, your relationship won't last. And I think he got that part from us because we didn't commit ourselves to God and earlier in our relationship, and it didn't last. And we were a prime example of what can happen. And I think that really hit home to him, and it was...
Well, he saw the difference in us when we stopped just becoming believers and became followers, and it really improved our marriage and it brought us back together. So he really...
Yeah, it's nice to know that your kids, and your kids do, they do pick up on everything you do, so it's...
And Tyler said about how to make love last, he said, spend time together and show respect. He's a boy. Of course he would say respect.
So if you asked a person on the street, what is love? They will usually define it in terms of feelings. A Christian understanding of love is that it's not an abstract noun so much as an active verb. Love is about what we do. It involves action. And one of the most famous verses in the Bible, and we've all seen it, is from John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Love always means making a sacrifice for the sake of another. That can be easier in theory than in practice. Here's a little story from a young man who said, "My darling," he wrote this in his a note to his girlfriend, and he said, "My darling, my darling, my darling." Well, he's just pouring it on. "I love you, I love you, I love you. I'd come through fire and water to see you." Sounds like something I'd say. P.S. Meet you tonight at the bus stop unless it's raining.
Yeah. So like, your eyes are like diamonds, honey?
Eyes are like diamonds.
That was his first line to me. Your eyes are like diamonds.
That's right. I'm ready for him to pay off. It worked. That's right. So a marriage that is full of love is one in which a husband and a wife are giving to each other, aiming to meet each other's needs so as to make the other one feel loved.
Okay. So So what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about, if you're not familiar with love languages, we're going to really talk about what each love language is, and then you're going to have an opportunity to kind of find out what yours is, and also to find out what your spouse's is and see if you're speaking your own love language to your spouse or if you're speaking their love language. The love language term actually came from Gary Chapman in his book, The 5 Love Languages. And the 5 love languages are words of affirmation or words. And that's encouraging our spouse to say, by saying, I love you, you're wonderful, or giving compliments like, you look great, or when he talks about me in a positive way to other people. So it's really just words of affirmation. The second one is presents or gifts. This could be flowers as a way of showing love, or giving little inexpensive things or big expensive things. Diamonds. Christmas is coming up. The third one is touch, or physical touch, and we can, that's a pretty obvious one. It's someone who really likes hugging, kissing, or they really appreciate the fact that you take time to make love. Of course, that's important in any marriage, but certain people it's more important than for others. The fourth one is for time, or also quality time. It's also known as quality time. And that's just setting aside special time to focus our attention exclusively on that person. Number 5 is actions, or acts of service. And by doing things for each other, like cooking a meal or being thoughtful, serving the other person in different ways.
So we're going to touch
So
on
those are the 5 love languages, and we're going to kind of go into a little bit more detail. But first, we want to tell you what ours are, so that you can get an idea of where we come from.
Get a closer insight to us here.
Yeah. For each of us, one of these ways will be more important than for others. But it's important to remember that just because you have a primary love language doesn't mean that you don't speak other languages as well. And for some people, you can have more than one language, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Gary Chapman describes these ways of expressing love as love languages, because at least one of the 5 ways of showing love communicates love to us in our native language, and the language that we best understand. So for myself, or I'll let you do that one.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Todd. We will. Oh, yeah, I'll tell Todd.
Yeah,
okay,
tell me what's mine.
For Todd, and I can do this without looking, his is physical touch, and just for your reference, that scores the absolute positive lowest on my scale. With the Todd, his second one, and it's actually a pretty close second, and that's words of affirmation. He just really appreciates, not only when I give him a hug, but also when I tell him how great he looks.
Thanks, babe. You don't think this makes me look... Never mind.
You look great.
And
your butt does not look bad in those pants.
Well, thanks a lot. For my lovely wife, she likes quality time. She likes it when I spend quality time with her, whether it be taking her we go walking, or we go shopping together, window shopping, every store shopping, quality time. Her other one is...
Acts of service.
What's that?
Mine changed, so I have to kind of let him off the hook.
Candace changes, yeah. I mean,
when we did this the first time, it was quality time and words of affirmation, but we just did it again at the marriage retreat, and so it changed. So it might be a little off.
You still like your quality time as number 1?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you like acts of service?
Yes.
Yes.
Acts of service.
Acts of service. Good guess? Thank you very much. Whew. And many of us are bilingual. That is, 2 of these love languages communicate love almost equally effective to us. And between Candace and myself, we'll cover 4 of the love languages as our primary way we like to receive love. So, physical touch, words of affirmation for me, quality time, acts of kindness, service.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I mean, when I come home and the house is vacuumed and the laundry is done and all of those things, I was like, whew, yes.
Score 1 for Todd. And the reason there is no love in so many marriages is that we tend to show love in the way that we'd like to receive it. So, for example, I'm a physical touch guy. Candace doesn't like that as one of her primary things. And when Candace comes home from, say, a long trip, one of the least things she wants to do is to have me show up in my bathrobe and do my thing and say, hey, baby, I missed you. No, she's not ready for that. By no means is she ready for that. I have to say stuff like, I missed you. I'm glad you're home. Let's sit and talk
Honey,
for a while.
come on, I gave you a hug last night.
Where were we? Oh, that's right. Some people think their husband or wife ought to understand. See, for us, in the beginning, this class was so wonderful for me as with the love languages. I didn't understand Candace's love language in the beginning. And I couldn't understand why she would reject me with the physical touch. Like, man, it made me feel like I was, nobody. But to understand Candace's love language, that physical touch is low on the totem pole for her. Oh, okay. It's not that she doesn't like me or wants to be around me or wants to hold me. It's just not a top priority for Candace. And that was big. That was big to hit. So it's like thinking that French ought to understand English. If we speak slowly and loudly enough, you'll understand it. But you just can't put the two languages together and expect a French person to understand an English guy like myself. Even if they did speak English, they probably still wouldn't understand me, but that's the French. But we must communicate love to our husband or wife in the way that they best understand it. We must learn their love language. It's no good for a husband saying, but I bought her presents if his wife's love language is quality time. I used to do that. I used to say, same thing right there. I'd bring her a gift or some roses or some flowers from work, and everything's good now, right? Here you go. Here's your flowers. Now, touch me. It didn't work that way. And it's no good for a wife to say, but I spent time with him if his love language is acts of service. It's important to know each other's love language.
Okay. So trying to use our husband or wife's love language can feel a little bit odd at first and unnatural because we're more likely or more apt to speak the love language that's ours, that's our own love language, whether you know it or not. So for me, quality time, I'm always wanting to spend time with him, and I'm thinking, okay, but I spent all this time with him, and I don't understand, just like he was saying, he's always giving me physical attention, or whatever it is, because he's speaking his love language, and I'm thinking, ugh, can I just have a hug and you go away? And he's thinking, shopping, ugh, I don't want to spend all this time with her, when really what I just want is for her to give me a hug, or any other physical touch. Things. Todd and I are opposite in a lot of ways, and we talked about Todd's primary love language being physical touch, and Todd knows that on a Saturday morning, if I take a little extra 15 minutes to just, instead of thinking about all the laundry that needs to be done and the shopping that needs to be done, I just lay in bed just for an extra 15 minutes just to give him that. He knows that he now knows that is really me showing him love. And for him to just really stop what he's doing or not schedule time with his friends and to really just spend time with me, he knows that, and I know that he's showing me love that way. Because he's speaking a language that's not really natural to him, but he's doing it out of love for me and vice versa. So one thing to remember is that even if you're not normally, or it's not natural for you to speak another language, it's something that can be learned. And it's easier than Spanish, I can tell you, because I tried to learn Spanish. No hablo mucho español. Excuse me. But the thing that we also need to remember is that it does take effort, and it takes discipline, and it also takes a lot of practice. It's something that you constantly have to remind yourself to do. And if you have a really good communication with your spouse, you can remind each other, hey, Candace, I really need a hug today, and I just want to remind you that, and even just kind of in a funny way, Todd will say, love language, need some touch.
Well, I think a point we need to bring up, too, is that we assume that our partner knows our love language. I mean, early in our marriage, I assumed Candace, I didn't know what love languages were, but I just assumed that she would, be more physical with me, more affectionate that way. And when and she probably assumed that I would want to spend more time with her, communicate with her, talk with her. Until you actually get what your spouse's love language is and understand it, you're going to be heartbroken. You're going to be upset. You're going to be, man, She don't get it.
Why doesn't he just know?
Right.
I mean, how many women out there know what I'm talking about? Why doesn't he just get it? Why doesn't he just know?
Right.
So learning the love language for your spouse can be, it really can change your marriage. And it really did, in a lot of ways, really change our marriage because it helped us understand each other. And it also helped us learn to communicate with each other and handle conflict in different ways as well. So before you do this exercise to discover which language you each have, we're going to do a 5-minute crash course in each language so that you have a good understanding of what each thing is. So the first thing that we're going to do is words of affirmation, or in your book it's referred to as loving words. It's important to remember that words are really powerful. So a lack of loving words can have disastrous results in a marriage. And I'm just going to read something to you that's an example of that. It's a poem that was written over 100 years ago by Eller Wheeler Wilcox. And it's about a woman who has had an affair. And the poem is an explanation to her husband, though she does say that it's not an excuse, and not an excuse for being unfaithful. So each day our lives that had been one life at the start, farther and farther seems to drift apart. Dead was the old romance of a man and a maid. Your talk was all of politics and trade. Your work, your club, the mad pursuit of gold, absorbed your thoughts. Your duty kiss felt cold. Upon my lips, life lost its zest, its thrill, until one fateful day when earth seemed very dull, it suddenly grew bright and beautiful. I spoke a little, and he listened much. There was a tension in his eyes and such, a note of comradeship in his low tone. I felt no more alone. There was a kindly interest in the air. He spoke about the way I dressed my hair, and he praised the gown I wore. It seemed 1,000 years and more since I had been so noticed. He had mine ear, been used to compliments year after year. If I had heard you speak as this man spoke, I had not been so weak. So that can be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
There's 3 things about affirming words and communication and love. Compliments show that we notice our spouse. Thankfulness shows that we have an appreciation for our spouse. And encouragement shows that we really care. So I'm going to give you some examples. When we use compliments like, Todd, you're good at making a room full of strangers feel very comfortable.
And I could say, and I've done this, Candace, I like the way you're so organized, you're so detail-minded, and she really is. And having her organized and detail-minded is perfect.
Sometimes I am a little scattered sometimes. But often we just don't say it. I think a lot of times we think good things about our spouse way more than we say it. So if you can just try to get those thoughts out into words, even if that's not your spouse's love language. I mean, how could it hurt by just saying something positive that you're already thinking? Or I could say, now, this is something that came up when we were kind of thinking together